Hey everyone, it's Ferociousllama, and I'm here with Soul Sisters. This was my very first modern deck, very first deck I ever got on Magic Online, and it's kind of cool to play. I think it's fun. It's pretty competitive. In the current meta game, it's not very good against combo, but there's not a lot of combo going around right now because there's a lot of, Grixis Delver, and there's Jund, which it supposedly has a good matchup on. I don't know about that, but it's a Soul Sisters deck. We have 23 land. We have 2 Windbrisk Heights that come into play tapped, and we'll just play a creature or play whatever card is under it for free. We'll essentially tap it and tap 1 mana if we attack with 3 or more creatures, which is pretty good in this deck because a lot of times we'll have 3 or more creatures. We have a bunch of plains, and we have 2 Cavernous Souls. We only have 2 Cavernous Souls because we have some spells in the deck. And as the deck's kind of evolved, all we have are 4 Path to Exiles and 3 Spectral Processions, and then 2 Brave the Elements for giving our creatures protection from a color. But over time, maybe I could run more caverns, maybe 3 or 4 caverns, just because I find that putting a cavern on a human is great, or on soldier even is good, because I have Ranger of Eos as a human soldier, and Johnny's Pride as a soldier. Everything else, though, is like a human cleric, human cleric over here from Machias. This is a fairly new edition, the Machias, and it seems pretty good to me because it'll pump up our entire team. But what's even better is with an Archangel of Thune out, we pretty much won the game when Archangel is out. But even if we get 1 life gain, I call it 1 cycle of life gain, where we have 2 Soul Sisters and we get an Archangel, our Machias gets bigger, and then he can just pump everything else up, which I think is pretty good. And what's nice is he can be a 2/2, 3/3, 4/4, 5/5, whatever we have for mana. He's great in the later game against Ranger if we don't have 30 life to get a Serra Ascendant. So that's why he's in here, and he can be tutored with Ranger. That's the only reason he's here. And we have 4 Path Exiles because you got to have removal. We got 2 Brave the Elements, which is great against a lot of the field, and especially a lot of the red sweepers. I haven't seen a lot of Pyroclasms lately just because of, I guess, kind of the way the metagame's been going. But I have not. It's great against a lot of things. It's even great against a lot of times where, people will attack in with Geist of St. Traft, and all I have is 2 Soul Sisters, and I really don't want to trade my 2 Soul Sisters, but you kind of have to against a Geist. So you can give him pro white. Or block and wait for him to try and Path to Exile one of your guys so he can kill both your guys and, get way ahead. And you just give it protection and you kill his guy, and it sort of goes really crappy for him. Spectral Protection, this is actually the most efficient spell in Magic regarding getting tokens. Yeah, I know Lingering Souls is quote-unquote better, and it's because you can cast it twice. But in a mono white deck, Spectral Procession is better. Just because, you can only cast it once and you only get 3 instead of 4, but it costs 2 less mana. So when you look at the premium for those with that 1 extra token, it's 2 mana essentially, which isn't that great of a deal. And we like lots of tokens in one shot because we want to gain lots of life. There are 10 Soul Sisters total. I don't know if I mentioned that already. 10 Soul Sisters, 4 Souls Attendants, 4 Soul Wardens, and 2 Auriok Champions. I've tried it with 4 Auriok Champions, but the deck just gets too slow when you have too many 2-drops. So having lots of 1-drops is kind of how this deck kind of gets going and fends off those early beats. Like even against zoo decks that go turn 1 Nacatl, turn 2, attack with a 3/3 Nacatl, that's fine. We just gain a bunch of life. And they can't kill us very efficiently, so it just takes forever. And by the time that they're able to, build up like a board state to where we're actually losing life every turn, we're not just, losing and then gaining it back. We're actually losing more than we're gaining. We've got like a Johnny Prideweight that'll turn into a 30/30 or something by the time by the time anything happens, or get an Archangel of Thune and just auto win, or even a Ranger of Eos is good because it can block and kill their Nacatl. So that's basically the deck. It's a pretty standard Soul Sister deck. The only thing is the Archangel of Thune is not very common, and I think it's because Archangel used to be really expensive when Pod was a deck. Now that Pod's not a deck, it's not that expensive. So I think they were like $4 or something. I don't know. That was a long time ago when I checked, but it was after Pod was banned. They were like $4 or something. So I would say pick up some Archangel of Thunes. They're cheap. and they're freaking awesome in Soul Sisters, because basically if you can resolve an Archangel and you get one trigger off it, you're gonna win the game. That's a good rule of thumb. Leyline of Sanctity was really against a lot of the combo decks. It's great against Burn too, and the reason they actually made it into the sideboard initially was when I first started playing online, there was just Jund. Everything was Jund. And it was awful because they would just beat up your hand. So I put in ley lines, and I was like, hey, you can wait till turn 3, and then you can waste your, your single solitary, wait till you draw your Maelstrom Pulse if you've got it, because Abrupt Decay won't kill it. So, it was one of those things where it's practical. It's really practical. There's a wide array of uses, and I like that. We have 3 ley lines. There used to be 4. There's only 3 now. 2 Ghostly Prisons to stop the really aggressive Delver decks, because we have had some problems in the past when Delver decks get out like a young Pyromancer. I know that a lot of the Grixis Pyromancer decks that are running around now, they don't have 4 Pyromancers. They usually just have 1, but some of them have more, and some people like Pyromancer. And their tokens are a pain in the butt, because especially like if they just know to kill, if they're able to kill all of our key cards, what's going to end up happening is we're going to have a bunch of 1/1s against their 1/1s, and they're just going to have more of them. And even though we gain a life every time one comes into play, or 2 life every time one comes into play, that's great, but they just have like infinity turns of attacking us, so eventually we're going to lose. So Ghostly Prison stops that. Really stops that quick. Stony Silence, never know when you're going to deal with Affinity, or, Tron, or... Tron's one of our worst, most terrible matchups. And there's Tron, and then there's Affinity, and then there's... I've seen, like, occasionally there's, like, a Bobble kind of deck. I don't know what you call it. I don't even know what you call it, but it's just a deck with a lot of stuff. A lot of artifacts, and you just kind of cycle them, and then you bring them back into play. It's a whole thing. And then we got 4 Leonin Arbiters. Now, I put Leonin Arbiters in here because players can't search libraries. It's awesome. If we can get one in early against the guy with a lot of fetch lands, it's sweet. Because a lot of times, for some reason, decks will play a lot of control decks will play, their tap land first, and then they'll play their fetch land. If we're going first and we go play a land, and then they go, okay, play their tap land, then we go, okay, Leonin Arbiter, then they go fetch land, and they can't crack it for like 2 more turns, so they don't have that counter spell they wanted to have up, which was kind of their plan all along. So it really messes things up. And then, decks like Tron, where they search all the time, and things like that, early in the game can really wreck their day. 2 Grafdigger's Cage, because I played against it earlier today with a different deck I was doing a video for Series 4. It was a Burial Rites and Elish Norn deck. That's just not fun. And you get killed pretty much all the time, unless we have like a giant Johnny's Pride Bait, but usually it happens early enough in the game where you don't have a giant Johnny's Pride Bait, a Johnny's Pride Bait, excuse me. So, it just stops that kind of stuff. Keeps stuff that's, not coming into play legitimately. And then, now for other creature decks that we end up having a huge standoff with, which can happen. It happens against a lot of decks, actually. Especially like the Podless Pod. Like if they can't combo us or they try to combo us. And, cause sometimes they don't even have the red cap combo. They just have the, all they have is the Kitchen Finks combo. What'll happen is they'll just try to gain a whole bunch of life. But if we're gaining, if we have 2 Soul Sisters in play, we're gaining as much life as they are. And that's a problem. Or if we have, double Aurak Champion, which that's actually the reason I used to run more, is because Pod was really rampant. But now that Pod's, not a thing, I only run 2. But if we have both of these in play, the Murderous Redcap can't kill them, and we'll gain 2 life every time it comes into play to do 2 damage to us. So we're never going to die. So anyway, that's kind of the story. So what we need to do is draw more cards than them to win, and that's Sky Sar. It lets us tap 2 creatures, because a lot of times in the game, the Soul Ascendants the Soul Wardens and the Soul's Attendants, they're really just there to gain life. They don't do anything. They don't do any attacking. They don't do anything. They just gain us life. That's all they do. And Sky Sar is great in those matchups, and especially good when they're not playing against decks that have a lot of discard. But anyway, let's play some games and see how it goes.